back. Again, Moshe of IKI, Israeli Krav International. And by the way, for those Europeans who call it icky, just so you know, we don't call it icky. In Israel, if a kid doesn't like their food, they go, ichsa, icky, ichsa. So icky is like, it means disgusting in Israel. So we don't call it icky. We call it IKI or Israeli Krav International. Thank you very much. Okay, so back to the brown belt test. Itay looked to his right, looked to his left, and they all said, Moshe's got nothing left. He's out of gas. And it's like with every movement, it feels like you're moving a ton. With every second, feels like it's eternity. When 5 seconds, when they say 10 seconds to the end of the fight, you might as well say next year. It just feels that difficult. So that's when you see people watching fights on TV and you say, oh, my grandmother can beat you and she's been dead for 6 years. You don't know what you're talking about. When you look bad fighting, it's because it's just hard to move after a while. I couldn't move my legs. So Itay came up to me, right into my face, and started shouting at me. Won't repeat what he said, but basically, you better finish this. And I thought at that point, I'm never going to get a black belt. I may not even pass this test, but one thing I'm not going to do, I'm not going to disappoint my instructor. I'm not going to quit now. No matter what, failing and passing didn't matter anymore. Getting the belt didn't matter anymore. The embarrassment that I might come back to my students and say, look, I didn't get my brown belt. That was no longer the issue. It was just, don't disappoint your teacher. I gave it everything I had, and I made it to the end. I remember the exact moment that the fights ended. I was wearing my boxing gloves, and I just fell flat down on my face. And 2 of the guys came, each one picked me up with one arm, and they took me outside where right outside the dojo, Itay had actually built an additional room. He built it himself, very impressive, with a ring and a shower and a sink. And they brought me and they just put my face into the sink and they turned on the cold water and it was over. And then I found out that I passed. So that was a very exciting moment. I'd say that was the most exciting belt test I've ever had. The black belt test was the same thing, same idea, but it was just 2 hours of techniques, I believe, and then 40 minutes of fighting. And when I say 40 minutes of fighting, that means you fight for 1 minute, that person leaves, he goes and sits down, somebody else who's been resting comes and he fights with you, and you continue like this. And these guys didn't take it easy. Each person came out like a lion roaring to go. And I remember it was actually during the, I think it was during the brown belt test that Itay pulled me aside in between the 2 parts of the test. And I had thought that I would do so well during the technique part that I could kind of like breeze through the fighting, and the fighting would be sort of like a rubber stamp, just be okay. But Itay, you know, he understood these sort of things. He knows what he's doing. And he took me into his office and he went like this. He said, your skill is so-so. I'm like, oh my God. I'm not sure if you're going to pass or not. You've got to prove yourself during the fighting part. Meaning, it's as if I didn't pass 100% during the technique. So not that I entered with plus points, I entered in the minus. So I had to now compensate and do even better. He said, you got to come out there like a tiger. I remember his exact words, you've got to come out there like a tiger. And I did. I gave it my all, and that was the brown belt test. And the same thing during the black belt test. That means 40 minutes, you're standing in the middle, one person comes, they fight, they go, and again, it's kickboxing, it's grappling, it's judo fights, just judo, and everything combined. For the black belt test, I remember, I think it was the black belt test, that it was postponed 3 or 4 times. I think it was the black belt test. Because every time I came, for some reason, Itay wasn't there. He got called into reserve duty. You know, he was an active soldier. The military needed him for something, so I'd come and I'd be all worked up. I'm like, where's Itay? He was called to reserves, Miluim. The excitement and the letdown. The day of the actual black belt test, I remember my brother, Roni, came to watch the test. And my mother, he had a cell phone in those days, which was kind of unusual, I think. He's a high-tech person. And he said, my mother said to him, when the test is over, call me and tell me 2 things. 1, is Moshe alive? And 2, did he pass? She said, you may be tempted to tell me other things. You may be tempted to tell me what he looks like or how badly he got hit. Don't. Just tell me if he passed and if he's alive. One other word I want to say about the brown belt test was, at the time, I was looking for a new job. I was moving up from my job as a dishwashing person to getting a regular job. And several jobs came up, several opportunities came up. But the hours that they required didn't suit the hours of training at Itay's, so I turned them down. I had my priorities. I missed weddings, came late to bar mitzvahs and so forth. The job I eventually did get with the AACI, Association of Americans and Canadians in Israel, they wanted to hire me, but that was 2 weeks away from my brown belt test. I said, listen, I'm happy to take the job, which I eventually got, but you're gonna have to wait 2 weeks because I have my brown belt test and I have to devote myself to this exclusively. Fortunately, they accepted. As promised, the next morning after my brown belt test, I showed up for work. They looked at me and they said, what happened? Were you attacked by a gang? Were you beaten up by a group of terrorists? You look like you've been beaten up by 15, 20 people. I said, no, actually about 30. But I passed my brown belt test, then my black belt test, and I got my job.